Hey everyone, so we're going to go on with the practical designer, and the next lesson is on the brassiere. I thought we'd take a minute to talk about what that word means here, since it's changed a lot in the last 100 years. I have some advertisements. Here, this is from the Dry Goods Economist, and I have a few from the Corset and Underwear Review, which are books that you can find on books.google.com, but I'll post a link in the comments below. So here in this Debbie Voice advertisement, it says that corsets are cut lower than ever, and the waist and hips only being confined. The bust is left perfectly free to be fitted with the proper style of brassiere. So you can see that here, she is corseted and the brassiere goes on top. In our Bien Jolie ad over here, you can kind of see a before and after of what that looks like. So here's her corset, it's cut low under the bust, and then the brassiere goes on top here. She's still wearing her chemise with it. So these brassieres could be left full and loose, or they could be partially boned, as we can see here. They could be fully boned as well. This one is partially boned, or it could be boned all the way up the bust, or completely left loose. These could also be used as bust improvers for young ladies, say our teens and tweens. Here it says that dainty little bust formers for the young miss are made of nettings and trimmed with val lace. In a front crossover styles, the narrow ruffles are arranged on the outside of all over embroidery models to give a slight bust contour. I have a link here in a different edition of the Dry Goods Economist. Basically what that looks like. They would be really ruffly and give kind of more of a curve to the bust. For those that don't have much bust. So let's go ahead and jump into our lesson. Of course, we're going to start with our foundation garment that we made at the beginning of this book. So if you haven't done that, go ahead and jump to that video and do that now. Here's our foundation garment, which looks like that. We're also going to need to jump into the previous lesson. For the tight-fitting corset cover, we're going to make the side seam lines and the dart from the previous lesson. So to do that, we'll start with the side seam, divide that in half, hold shift to draw a line down. I kind of go an arbitrary length, and then I like to use this tool to find the exact point of where they meet. We're going to measure out 3/4 of an inch for the underarm and 2 inches at the waist. And then at the waist, we're going to move all those up a 1/2 inch. And hold shift to get that perfect 90-degree angle. Could do that on the line. Alright, I'm gonna just connect those to make it a little more easy to see, and make those dotted lines so that we know that they're guidelines. That looks like it for the side seam. Let's come over here and work on the dart. First step is to divide that in half here, which is these 2 points on ours. We're going to measure over from this point to this point, which is X on our original draft, 3/4 of an inch. And we're going to measure down 2 inches. Move that out of the way. A19. Okay, so to find this point, I was playing around with this tool here, which is the Point, Intersect, Line, and Axis tool. If we click A19 and the line that we want to start on, so up to W, and the point we want to make the intersect from, we can get this, which will give us the shape here, I think pretty well. So I'm lining this up so that this line goes right on this point here, kind of following this guideline which connects here to there, to get our point. And then I'm going to go back in and draw my lines and curves for that. Start here. It's a very slight curve right at the top there. And then my line there. And I will do a dotted line there. Now we're going to measure over from 14 to 2. Against 14. Oh my gosh, take the space. Oh, there we go. Take the space from R to S and place the same amount from 14 to Z. OZ. So from R to S, the same amount, from 14 to Z. So we're going to do a point along this line, which is the same amount from W to A18 on mine. Length of lines, W to A18. Okay, good. And that's this point Z here. We're going to draw a straight line from S to Z, so we'll just connect those with this tool here. Make that dotted. Divide that in half to get the top of our dart. From Z to 2 is 2 inches. Oops, from Z to 2 is 1 inch. I read that wrong. From Z to 3 is 2 inches. So we're going to connect 1 to 2. And then we want to connect 1 to 3, making 15. So we measure this line and come down here the same amount. And I'm going to make us a guideline using the same point intersect tool. Here's our line, and here's our guide point. So this is going to make a straight line coming down here. And I'm going to extend kind of an arbitrary amount. Connect those. So we just want that straight line that's connected to this point. And I'm going to measure down along that line that I've made, and I want it to be the same as A23 to A24. So I'm going to go to length of line, A23 to A24, which gives me my point 15 over here. Okay, and we have our dart, so let's draw in that little waistline curve. And that's all we need from the tight-fitting corset cover instructions. We can move on to the actual lesson for the brassiere now. As this garment is to be strictly tight-fitting, divide the bottom of the back from D to 4. From D to 4, we're going to divide that in half to make 9, and from 9 to 19, take out ½ inch. So we divide that in half, and then take that over towards the back, ½ inch. Divide equally the back shoulder from L to M, or L to K on our draft, making 10 and connect 10 with 19. So we're connecting the shoulder point with the point closer to the back. Connect a trifle curved line lost to the breast line, which in this manner will produce a close-fitting back for the brassiere. So we're going to make a very slightly curved line that blends in with this line before it reaches the bust line. So we need a point here at the bust line, right where they intersect, and we're going to make a curved line from that point to our point 9 here. Barely curved at all, and running into that line before it gets to the bust line. Okay, moving on, to make the front part, divide the front shoulder from O to U, or from Q to U on our draft, right in half, making point 11 and connect 11 to 1, which is the top point of our dart. In order to get the proper close-fitting bust effect, begin to curve on a straight line from about the breast line, right about here, lost to the waist to 3. So again, it's going to blend into this line at the bust line, curve over, and blend in to this point as well. So we need to make a point here where these lines intersect. Then we can get our curve, and we're going to connect to A25 on mine. Bring that in. Nice and smooth. That looks pretty good. Okay, therefore it should be understood that the straight line continues for the outside part to the front of 2. So that is, we have 2 separate pieces now. This line here and this line here. Their wording is really weird. But that concludes that section. The opening or cutout around the neck is built on the same principle as for the lesson before this. So we're going to scooch on to the back. Divide the back depth at the center back from A to B, making 12. And it always says from A to B, but then it always shows from A to T, which looks more accurate to me since it's tight-fitting. Draw a line out from 12, hold shift to make it a 90-degree angle, and then come back and connect the intersection of those two lines right there, which gives us point 13. If a round effect is wanted, follow the dotted line from 10 to 12. So let's go ahead and draw in our dotted line here in case we want it later. That looks pretty good. Okay, to make the front opening, divide the space at the front edge from W to R, making 14. W to R, 14. And draw in this line again. About like that. Now to divide a curve, I do need to do a point along the curve. Choose my curve. And this is curve RW. So we do length of curves, RW, divided by 2. And that'll give me the midpoint of this curve, since I don't have an easy peasy tool for it. Okay, then we're going to draw our line out again, holding shift in the same way we did the back. Get the point where those lines intersect. Right there. And that makes our front square neckline. If we want our curved neckline, same points connected. Pretty good. And that makes our curved neckline. Okay, so to allow for button stand, in the front, allow 1 inch all the way through the edge of the front pattern from 14 to XX. This is your button stand allotment here. Inch. And then connect those with a multi-point curve. 41, 42. Hit enter to end the curve. Get out of the way. And I'm just trying to mimic the shape of this line here. Which is a bit hard to see. Let me switch everything else over to guidelines and maybe it'll be a bit more clear. So we want these two lines to be roughly the same. Okay. And this is only for if you want a button stand in the front, if you're going to put buttons in the front. Okay, to cut out the pattern, remember that the pattern is cut out on the same principle as the corset cover or any other garment, with the exception that there is positively no need for a seam at center back. Therefore, deduct 3/8 of an inch for the seam from 12 to D. So we're going to deduct 3/8 of an inch. What is 3/8 of an inch in decimals? I have forgotten. 0.375. Okay, and then we can connect those. And I'll make them dotted so that they match. Right here. 3/8 of an inch for the seam. Now that the small dart, which is between 9 and 19 is lost to the breast line, is to be taken out. Oh, note that the small dart, which is between 9 and 19 is lost to the breast line, is to be taken out. When the pattern is cut out, we are to allow seams all the way through from 9 to 19 up to 10, and 3/8 of an inch is the proper amount to allow at each side. So what that means is these are separate pieces. We are going to cut this out separate from this piece. This is a 4-piece pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 4 pieces per half. And it says basically the same thing for the front. So let's finish up our draft. We do need to draw in our armhole curves. From here to here. That looks about right. We want a curved side seam in here. Nice and even. We want a curved hemline. At the waist, curved at the shoulders, and then again for the front. Excuse me. Oh, I'm supposed to raise up for that seam allowance. 3/8 of an inch. and then I can draw my curve. In reading all of the advertisements for the brassiere, what was recommended most often was that this underarm should be reinforced. They say it's where it wears out the most often. So a little extra strong fabric under there would probably be a good idea. How about my curves drawn in? Oh, I need my side seam curve for the front. Wrong point. So I'm going to join, curve, and line there. And I want to join these two. Select the curve first and then the axis. What's this now? Oh, my guideline, of course. Oh, no, it connects to the shoulder. Okay. I think we're ready to make our details for printing this pattern. Okay, so remember that center back is on the fold. Everything has built-in seam allowances except for these new lines that we've created here in the middle, which we need to add seam allowance to. I'm going to go ahead and follow the square neckline so we can show how to make the notches here for where to connect it. So we'll start along our square neckline. Remember, we always make our details, our pattern pieces to print going in a clockwise direction. Select the points that you want to add to your pattern. I don't need that one. Oh, I need to join those at the bottom. Cancel. So before I can do that, I need to join these points here. And that's kind of a mess, huh? All right. Ooh. Any of the points over here? I think that's roughly right. Okay, now we can make our pattern pieces to print. correct. We're going to select the curve. If you notice in the middle of this curve, there's a tiny little arrow and it's pointing in a counterclockwise direction. So I need to hold Shift before I can select this curve. And then I'm going to select the point here where I want it to stop. And that goes all the way back up to the top. I'm going to add in this point and then hit enter. This is the center back pattern piece. Okay. Next piece. Selecting this curve, the arrow is pointing in the correct direction, so I don't need to hold Shift. I want this because we're going to turn it into a notch. I'm going to make another notch here. This is a curve, so we do need to select that curve to where it ends. This curve as well. Curve. That looks good. This is our side back. This point in, and I want to add this point in where the square neckline ends, and that's the side front. I believe that's all the points we need here. So this is our front. So I move over to the details page, and we have our pattern pieces. So I want these points to be notches so that we can know where to connect. So go ahead and right click on that and go into the options mode. That's A36. Right click on that and call it a pass mark. So now you see it has this line here. Also A31, a pass mark. So when we come into our pass marks here on this menu, you can see the two that we have named pass marks, those notches. Choose that and choose what style you like for your notches or your match points. I'm just going to stick with one line. We do need to add 3/8 of an inch seam allowance along this side, so that's in our pass menu, seam allowance. Most of the seam allowance is already built in. We only want to add it from here to here. So apply, we can see it adds it to the whole thing. So you kind of have to work through. So node L. Node L has no seam allowance before or after. Apply. So we've taken off that seam allowance. Next point is A48. It has no seam allowance before, but it does have our 3/8 of an inch seam allowance after. Apply. So you can see there. Next is A36. We need to change that to 375. Copy and paste. Apply. Okay, so everything else should be taking off the seam allowance. Now, why is it making a weird little thing here? Angle. Let's see what that does. I didn't fix it. First edge symmetry. Nope. Second edge symmetry. Well, the answer is, I don't know. It should cut it off straight as it did there. This program is weird sometimes. Well, it's because my curve line is not going where it should. So let's go into the draw mode. Which piece is that? Side back. I've selected point A28 instead of A51. No, I did not. But my curve is going down to A28, but it should stop at A51 when I come back and click that point. It's a mystery. Okay. So right click on this, get our options. A36 is a pass mark and A31 is a pass mark. Pass marks are one line. This is what our pass mark looks like when it's one line. If you want to see the other options, 2 lines, makes 2 tiny little lines close together. 3 lines there. Thereabouts. I like to stick with just the one line. It doesn't really matter to me. I just clip for notches. So let's go in and work on our seam allowance. Remember, this line is on the fold, this seam allowance, and this seam allowance should already be included. Okay. Oops. That one's not right. What point is that? A31. There we go. And you'll go ahead and do the same for the front as well. We've included the amount of space to make the buttonhole placket in the front on this draft. We need to add seam allowance here and here. And everything else is included. So you can go ahead and do that on your own. You don't have to sit here and watch me do that. I think that's it for this video. I can't think of anything else that needs to be done for the brassiere. And remember, this is just a basic brassiere block. They came in all sorts of shapes and styles. So you can use this basic shape, maybe cut it out along this line here to get something a little bit more like that. One important thing to note, of course, the armholes of brassieres are really tight, so when you go to fit this, make sure that that's right up to the arm side. I think that's the only thing we need to note. Cool. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll be doing more lessons from this book and others if you're interested. Talk to you later.